Hey now, Blue Jay fans and baseball fans in general who obviously have nothing better to do because they're checking out the Fekless Wonder here, Steve Fek. And I'm handing out free tickets so you can enjoy the views from the On Fek Circle every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, presented by JFtC.com and the Jays from the Couch radio podcast and the JFtC versus ALS campaign. It is ALS Awareness Month here in May. Major League Baseball, Lou Gehrig Day, June 2nd. A lot of focus will be on ALS, and this is a cause, a campaign that our senior editor and founder, Shaun Doyle, is very passionate about. His family's been affected. My family's been affected. I've lost several friends to the ravages of ALS. So we're asking you to consider making a tax-deductible donation to the JFtC versus ALS campaign, because everybody needs to be aware of the many ways that those donations, in any amount, we're not asking, I mean, if you've got extra money just laying around in stacks, by all means, make a larger donation. But anything you can donate whatsoever, ALS Canada does a wonderful job, but they need help. They need funding. They need your donations so they can assist patients and their families to live with a diagnosis that ultimately is not only life-changing, it is eventually life-ending. So on our website, JFtC.com, you'll find a link to make your secure tax-deductible donation, or you can go to support.alsevents.ca/Jays from the Couch. That's support.alsevents.ca/Jays from the Couch to make that donation. You can also visit, while you're on the website, you can visit our Redbubble shop, the Jays from the Couch Redbubble shop. You can get T-shirts, hats, clocks, pillows, all sorts of merchandise with the various show logos on it. 100%. All of the profits from every purchase at the Redbubble shop goes directly to the JFtC versus ALS campaign. So please do consider doing that. Even while the show is on, you can minimize me. Lord knows, even if you tried to mute the sound, you're going to hear me probably come through your speaker anyway. So if you have to make the donation now, you don't really need to look at my face as I'm talking, but please do help us, help ALS patients. And you can also, if you make a donation during the ALS Awareness Month here, and we'll even extend it into June 2nd, which is ALS Lou Gehrig Day with Major League Baseball, you will earn an entry to be able to get me to shut up, to basically come to me face-to-face and co-host the On Fek Circle, maybe try to put an end to some of my foolishness that I babble on about. So please do consider making a donation in any amount as soon as you can. The things that ALS Canada does for patients, it's even simple things like wheelchairs or drives to doctor's appointments. Those donations go directly to those costs. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of the show, it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a fun one, I think. There is some pretty shocking stats that I came up as I was researching for the show. Let's throw out some ceremonial first pitches. The Jays from the Couch radio podcast streams to you live 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Mondays. It's hosted by the founder, our senior editor, Shaun Doyle. The program is your source for quality Blue Jays coverage and for guaranteed laughs whenever we do our fake news segments. And if you're looking for an informed fan's perspective on the Blue Jays, you can put on your Blue Jays colored glasses and tune in to Karen Suter and her terrific Sunny Side of the Dome program, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. She puts her heart and soul into the show, and it comes through. And she'll do everything from transactional analysis to what she calls the heart of the order, and it truly does come from her heart. So make sure you check out her program coming up on Thursday. You can also find these shows on demand. If you're not catching the live streams, you can find the shows on demand on the Jason on the Couch YouTube channel. You can also download the audio podcast from our podcast feed at Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Podbean. There's a Stitcher. There's all sorts of sources for you to download the podcast. That way you can listen and learn at your schedule, not based on whenever we decide to come on live. We also recommend, while you're on our Facebook page, you should join the Blue Jays Talk for All group. There's some really wonderful articles that get shared. There's some great conversations throughout the week. But I think the really key part of that is when you join the group, there is no charge. You just join the group on Facebook. You can join in our live in-game chats. There have been some terrific points made. There's been some really friendly debate on players and strategies and situations. So we do invite you to not only check out our episodes and shares, but also join in for the in-game live chats. There'll be one tonight, I'm sure. I'll be jumping off here and trying to get in that live chat as soon as the game begins. Enough plugging, enough patting ourselves on the back. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of this program. We're going to take a look outside the box score and some player and team performance splits that will drive you literally bananas. And right on cue, a regular viewer, Dulcimerist, the splits of the Jays' record against ALS teams and other teams is crazy. It is crazy. It's bananas. It's bonkers. I was truly shocked at some of the things that I dug up. We're going through that. And we thank Dulcimerist for posting in a timely manner. I wanted to get something out to you privately, Dulcimerist, but for some reason, even though it's my show, I can't reply to you till we actually go live. And then we all know I can't do more than one thing at the same time. So, but I'm glad you jumped in here. We were able to get your point up there. Because that's really the first point that we want to talk about here, is what actually is going on. I mean, I think we're all perplexed. We're all confused as to why the Blue Jays are in last place in the AL East, why they have been so wildly inconsistent, why they just can't seem to string a long batch of winning performances, long winning streaks. There's something that's just not right. And I you could point to player performances, and we'll talk to about a couple of them there. But ultimately, it's the Blue Jays have to take care of business. And this little research project I started was really triggered by something that Karen Suter from Sunny Side of the Dome had brought up behind the scenes and on her show, that there was a stretch where the Jays were 8-1 on weekend games, but they were 1-8 in games during the week. You just don't see that. I mean, I honestly, I didn't have enough time to go back through the 150 some odd years of baseball to actually see whether that's ever happened before. But I mean, that's the kind of really quirky, weird, crazy stuff, as Dulcimerist called it, that's been happening this season. And this is a team that has serious and still has serious aspirations to win an American League pennant and go to the World Series, maybe have a world title. I think the odds are still around 49-50% to make the playoffs. But I would imagine the odds of winning the AL East would probably be in single digits now because of their performance against teams in the AL East. In the month of May, the Blue Jays are 1-11 against AL East opponents. They are 5-13 on the season. They've scored 70 runs. They've allowed 97 runs against AL East foes. And there's been some series sweeps. Red Sox, the Orioles, Rays are going to be a challenge here, I think, in this series, the way things are lined up. But for the rest of the schedule, they're 20-10. So they're getting the job done against the other teams on their schedule. But you can't go 5-13 in your division and expect to win that division. Especially now that we have a balanced schedule and everyone's so happy that we're going to play every team every year. Isn't that wonderful? It is not wonderful. I came out and lost my mind when they first proposed it during negotiating during the CBA. I've hammered this point ad nauseum. Okay. I think one of the reasons we're on hiatus on the radio pod, the main podcast, is that Shaun and Karen are just tired of me saying the same thing over and over again. But it's a reality. You've got 5 less games against your division opponents. Okay. And you don't have as many opportunities to sit back and say, oh, we'll get them next time. Because you're not going to have as many games and you may not get them next time. You've dug yourself a hole. It's like trying to get out when you're in a icy snowbank, or if you're stuck in the mud. The instinct is, oh my God, now I'm going to just gun it and I'll get out. You're going to just dig a deeper hole for yourself when you do that. So this whole situation with playing against teams in the AL East and playing so poorly and being outplayed and in some cases dominated against your division opponents, that's what puts you in last place in your division. No matter how much talent you have on your roster, you've got to beat the teams on your schedule, and especially the teams in your division on your schedule. And I know there's some people that are going to be out there, they're going to listen to this and say, oh, but it's the strength of schedule, and the Rays have had it so much easier. Well, first of all, over the course of the year, every team is going to play every other team and play the equal number of divisional games. So you X that out right away. But when you look at the Blue Jays, they played the Tigers and the Royals and the White Sox and the Angels and teams that are struggling, like the Cardinals. The Mariners had really high expectations. They came and swept the Pirates at the time when they had the second best record in the National League. But ultimately, the Pirates are not, I think, what people consider an elite, legitimate contender yet. So the Pirates have been able to get that 20-10 record outside of their division by playing some bad teams as well as some very, very good teams. So erase that argument. Okay, we're at that magical 50-game mark now where everybody says, well, and Mark Shapiro says every year, well, we really like to wait for about 50 games or so to see where we're at. Well, if you go online or you pick up a paper and you look at the standings, we're in last place in the American League East primarily because of the performance against the division rivals. Now, another thing that amazes me is some of the player performances. And I picked out 2 that jumped out at me. And the splits here are just so mind-blowing. I had to look at multiple sources to make sure it wasn't a misprint. And I'm going to take a scapegoat. I'm going to take a hero. Our scapegoat is Dalton Varsho. Everyone is saying, oh, Dalton Varsho, oh, what a terrible trade. Oh, he stinks. He's a bum. They don't look at the whole game. They don't look at how much he has contributed on the defensive end of the game. But a problem for Dalton is that he is not performing well at home. And before I get to some of those horrific splits that I've been talking about here, let's go into some basic picks. Right-hand pitching versus left-hand pitching. He's batting 199 against right-hand pitching, 224 on base percentage, 397 slugging, 677 OPS. That's not good. Okay. Against left-hand pitching, a little bit better. I mean, batting average 242, so he's like 53 points higher. But, on base percentage, slugging, OPS are actually worse than against right-hand pitching. And then I got to think, well, why is this happening to Dalton Varsho? I mean, he has made a nice adjustment, at the bat. His bat is a lot more quiet. So, so really he's not rocking it like he did when he was with the Diamondbacks. He doesn't really necessarily have a toe tap. He does lift his front foot and almost points it down like a ballerina that would want to be going tiptoeing across the stage as a timing mechanism. And I think that's going to pay dividends for him in the long run. But then I started thinking, well, maybe it's because it's going to be affected by where he plays. So he's played the most games in left field. He's hitting 194, 259 on base percentage, 395 slugging, 654 OPS. All 7 of his home runs have come while he's been playing in left field. Ironically, when he's playing center field, the position that you would think would give you more pressure, it's probably the most demanding of all the outfield positions for sure, but even the most demanding in general on any roster in any lineup. He's hitting well, 244. He only has 1 RBI when he starts in center field. He's hitting 244, 353, 311, as a slugging, and 644 OPS. So, again, it doesn't seem like no matter what position he's playing, he's struggling no matter where it is. Then I'm like, well, maybe it's because of where he's batting in the lineup. Now, when he's hitting third, which was a lineup that I brought up in last week's conversation, where I think that if you had Chapman in the cleanup spot and batted Varsho 3, I think, and then you had Bo at 1, Vladimir Guerrero at 2, and then Springer down at 5, I thought it would really help balance out and lengthen the lineup a little bit. When he hits third, he's hitting 276. When he's in the cleanup hole, he's batting 159. So whether you want to call it pressing, whether you want to call it choking, batting cleanup is not working for Dalton Varsho, at least not to this stage of the season. When he hits fifth, he's hitting 267. So even if you had, Springer third, let's say, and you put Varsho fifth, 267, I can live with that. In his new batting position, it's only a limited amount of at-bats. He's hitting 167. So it's definitely not bad. So I break it down now to the home and away splits. At home, at the Rogers Center, where most Blue Jay fans, at least casual Blue Jay fans, will actually be forming their opinions on his performance because they're getting to see him play in between shoving dollar loony dogs in your mouth and other things that go on when you're at the game, if you're as a casual fan. He's hitting 118, and that has dropped. Let me see. Just in this week, just this last week itself, it's dropped almost 70 points. He's hitting 118, 212 on base percentage, 171 slugging, 353 OPS. So it's no wonder the fans are giving him crap because they're seeing him at home and he goes, oh, wait, he's not doing anything. Hitting away, he's hitting 276 on the road. On base is okay, 330, 531 slugging, 861 OPS. So that's more of what you were looking for from Dalton Varsho. 6 homers, 15 runs batted in on the road, 1 homer, 2 RBIs at home. So that immediately said, well, wait a minute. Maybe it's hitting in the dome. Even though it's a retractable dome, maybe it's a vision thing. Maybe he's not picking up the ball. He's doing fine defensively, but coming from Arizona has a retractable dome. Admittedly, higher elevations, lighter air, ball travels, ballpark conditions are different. But he did hit better on the road as a Diamondback, not as drastically as 276 versus 118. But at home in 280 plate appearances, he had 11 homers, 32 RBIs, hit 221, 293 on base, 406 slugging, 699 OPS. On the road with 312 plate appearances, 16 homers, 42 runs batted in, 248, 311, 425, 786. So maybe we can't even say it's playing in the retractable dome. And you can't say, well, it's a change in dimensions and the ballpark's playing different because he didn't play here last year. So, when you have that situation from a key part of your lineup, you're going to struggle. So now let's look at the hero. Because you can say with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if anyone's going to be affected by the change of dimensions or whatever it is, it would be Vladdy as opposed to Dalton Varsho. On the road this year, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has 7 homers, 17 runs batted in 109 plate appearances. He's hitting 344, 413 on base, 625 slugging, and a 1.038 OPS. Not bad. Not bad. At the Rogers Center, he has no home runs. He has not hit a home run at the Rogers Center this year. 10 RBIs and 89 plate appearances, hitting 231, 303, 308, 661. Is anybody complaining about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? No, because he's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And he does so many things and he's so exciting and so engaging, you're going to look down on him. But when your superstar is struggling at home, that is probably even more impactful than having a guy like Dalton Varsho. So those are just some of the splits that came up this year that are just a little crazy. So let's move on to this week's Fekless Wonder. And this was generated by a trade that happened last night. Jonathan Davis, former Blue Jay, was traded from the Tigers to the Miami Marlins. But I wonder, given the outfield situation, reserves, not the starters, the reserves, how many Blue Jay fans are longing for the days when Jonathan Davis was a Blue Jay? Or Anthony Alford? I mean, 2 different case studies. Anthony Alford's Blue Jay career ended the minute that Ben Cherington left the organization to take the general manager job in Pittsburgh. And it didn't take long once he was DFA'd by the Blue Jays for Cherington to pick him up. And Alford is crushing the ball overseas. But really, again, I don't think he was really ever given a sustained chance to show what he could do. But Anthony Alford, great defender, had some health issues. So maybe you don't miss Anthony Alford as much. Though I should say, over 161 plate appearances when he was a Pirate, he hit 230, struck out a bunch, but he had 6 homers, 15 RBIs, and 6 stolen bases. So wouldn't you think maybe you'd like to have Anthony Alford rather than Nathan Lucas? Nathan Lucas should be hitting in Buffalo at AAA, getting at bats, getting regular looks. If you still had Jonathan Davis, you could keep Nathan Lucas. Now, again, Lucas is old for a prospect, so it's really now or never, but he has never, ever, ever been a part-time role bench player. Jonathan Davis has major league time where he is, where he's used to playing sporadically, but doing a great job defensively when called upon. He wasn't horrible as an offensive outfielder. The Yankees gave him a shot. Milwaukee gave him a shot. He had glimpses of that. Certainly defensively, he was terrific. But ultimately, wouldn't you rather have Jonathan Davis than Nathan Lucas? If Jonathan Davis struggles a little bit in a role player, are you affecting his development? He's 31 years old. Though I'm saying you heard it first here. Jonathan Davis, after a couple of at-bats at AAA for Miami and Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. They like to do this with people they acquire, no matter what the age. After about 50 at-bats or so, he's going to come up and he's going to make major contributions on both sides, offensively and defensively. And it's going to make Blue Jays wonder, wouldn't it be nice to have Jonathan Davis? You know who also would be nice to have? Jordan Luplow. Now I realize, okay, he's a career, journeyman, part-time player, but that's the point. His whole career, he has been a bench role player, tremendous defender, great throwing arm, good base runner. Since 2017, when he came up with the Pirates, through his time, in Cleveland, through his time in other stops that he had. Remember when the Rays picked him up down the stretch? He was terrific. I want to say that was 2021 when Luplow came up there. He had 4 homers and 72 plate appearances, hit 246, 319, 478, 796 split line in a reserve role. But that's what he's used to. Over the course of his career, he's going to go between 85, 90 at bats. I think the most at bats he ever had was when he was in Arizona. He had 230 at bats, I think, and he did not hit for much. But again, you want to have Jordan Luplow there because he knows the pressure. He's been in those situations coming off the bench or coming in for defensive purposes, maybe getting at bat later. Jordan Luplow should not be taking away at bats from prospects at AAA Buffalo. He should be on the Blue Jays roster now. Nathan Lucas should be down at AAA. But ultimately, we shouldn't be having these discussions. I don't know if you saw the transaction for tonight. Otto Lopez, who was brought up when Espinal went on the IL, was sent back down the very next day, and they brought up another infielder, Ernie Clement, a guy who has major league experience in Oakland. I know he had a couple other stops as well. Why didn't you just do this last night when you did the original transaction? Why did you have Otto Velez available for one game, then sending him back down to Buffalo? Why did you do that? If you're concerned about development, keep him down in the first place and don't do this with having him up for a day, then set option back out. He can't come back for 10 days now. And it reminds me of the Daniel Vogelbach transaction. Remember back 2020, they claimed him after Seattle had DFA'd him. He was here for 4 at-bats. He was here for about 8 days. Then Ross Atkins said, well, you know what? We need to make room for other players. So, Jonathan VR, that's much more important than having a Daniel Vogelbach who could drive in runs. So they DFA'd him, got claimed by Milwaukee. He had 4 homers and 12 RBIs over less than 3 or 4 weeks in Milwaukee. He made a difference for the Brewers making the playoffs that year. You have to question the roster management again with Ross Atkins and the front office. I mean, you have these situations where guys are given up on. Jonathan Davis, Anthony Alford, given up too quickly. And then you have players that can help you. But then it's like what Joel Piamps, who's having a great season this year, by the way. What was he claimed 4 different times in a calendar year? If you like him, keep him. Find a way to keep him and get rid of somebody else. This roster management with Ross Atkins is going to be a problem. So I wonder how many others people out there would wish to have Jordan Luplow up with the club or have Jonathan Davis in the minors to bring up so you're not wasting Nathan Lucas. I'm not going to touch on Brandon Drury and Rowdy Tellez. That really involves a whole show. But I just wondering how you guys feel about it. Time for the Blue Jays fortune cookie of fate. What kind of words of wisdom or words of warning do we have in this little fortune cookie? How about another fortune? I read the wrong side, but let's see what's going on here. Courage is grace under pressure. I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette are the ultimate grace under pressure. Kevin Gausman, Alec Manoa, even despite his struggles, Chris Bassett, Grace Under Pressure, and Dalton Varsho. Don't let those splits we talked about earlier in the show scare you off. He is still potentially an all-star player. Don't give up on him, but we got to figure out why those weird splits are happening. Time up for me. I'll be back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch this show on our YouTube channel as well as the Jason McCouch podcast feeds. Anywhere you find your finer podcasts. The Jason McCouch radio podcast remains on hiatus. We'll be back very, very soon. But this Thursday, you've got Sunny Side of the Dome and Karen Suter, 6 p.m. Eastern Time live. All of the shows available on our YouTube channel, on our podcast feeds, and social media links, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, it's out there. I'm the Fekless Wonder, Steve Fek, the madman across the border. We'll talk to you again next week.